My name is Danielle Harper. I'm 32 years old and I live in Columbus, Ohio. I never imagined that losing my father would also mean losing my home, my family, and everything I thought I knew about loyalty. But what hurt the most wasn't being kicked out. It was discovering why it happened and who had been lying all along. What would you do if the person you trusted most suddenly turned against you after your father's death? What if your own brother, your blood, threw you out of your childhood home without warning? And what if, just when you thought you had no one left, a mysterious old woman stepped in, claiming she knew secrets your family buried for years? Would you believe her or walk away? Because what she revealed didn't just change everything, it exposed a truth so shocking it made me question my entire past. Was my brother protecting something or hiding something far worse? I wish I could say the worst part of losing my dad was the grief, but honestly it was. The worst part was what happened right after. The day of the funeral felt like a blur. One of those heavy gray days where everything moves slowly, like the world itself is mourning with you. Family members I hadn't seen in years showed up, offering hugs that felt more like obligations than comfort. People kept saying things like, "He's in a better place and stay strong," but none of it really reached me. I was just numb. My dad wasn't just my parent, he was my safe place. The one person I knew would never turn his back on me, and as I stood there watching them lower his casket into the ground, I kept thinking, what happens now? But I had no idea how quickly I'd get my answer. After the burial, everyone gathered back at the house, our house, the one I grew up in. Every corner of it held memories, birthday parties, late-night talks, the smell of my dad's cooking on Sundays. It felt like the only place where I could still feel him. At first, everything seemed normal. People were talking quietly, eating, sharing stories about my dad. My brother Marcus was there too, but something about him felt off. He wasn't grieving. I mean, sure, he looked serious, but not heartbroken, not like someone who had just lost his father. He was moving around the house like he was hosting a business meeting. Calm, controlled. Almost impatient. I tried not to think too much of it. People process grief differently, right? That's what I told myself. But then, as the last few guests were leaving and the house started to quiet down, Marcus called my name. "Danielle, we need to talk." There was something in his tone that made my stomach drop. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't concern, it was final. We stepped into the living room, the same one where we used to watch movies with Dad. And for a second, I thought maybe he was finally going to open up. Maybe he needed support. Maybe we were about to have one of those raw, emotional sibling moments you see in movies. I couldn't have been more wrong. He didn't sit down, didn't hesitate, didn't even look uncomfortable. He just said it. "You need to pack your things. You have 24 hours to move out." I actually thought I misheard him. "What?" I asked, almost laughing in disbelief. "This is my house now," he said, completely serious. "Dad left it to me. You're not staying here," just like that. No warning, no explanation, no compassion. It felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" I said. "This is my home too. I've lived here my whole life." "Not anymore," he replied, cold, flat, like he was talking about changing the locks, not throwing his sister out after their father's funeral. I kept waiting for him to crack, to show some emotion, to say this was some kind of misunderstanding, but he didn't. "Dad made it clear," he continued. "Everything goes to me. The house, the accounts, all of it." I just stared at him because none of that made sense. My dad loved us both. He was fair, sometimes too fair. The kind of man who would split things down the middle just to avoid even the smallest conflict. There's no way he would leave me with nothing, not without even telling me. "You're lying," I said quietly, his jaw tightened. "Believe whatever you want, but you need to be out by tomorrow." That was it, conversation over. He walked away, leaving me standing there in complete shock. I remember looking around the room, the photos on the wall, the couch my dad used to nap on. The lamp he refused to replace even though it flickered half the time, and thinking, how can this be happening? I hadn't even had time to grieve, and now I was being erased, not just from the house but from my own family. That night I sat in my room, surrounded by boxes I hadn't even started packing, trying to make sense of it all. My heart was broken, my mind racing, and one question kept repeating over and over again. Why? Because this wasn't just cruel, it felt planned. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying Marcus's words in my head like a broken record. Dad made it clear, everything goes to me. The more I thought about it, the less it made sense. My dad wasn't the type of man to leave things unsaid, especially something this big. He believed in clarity, in fairness, in making sure no one felt left out. I mean, this was the same man who once sat us both down for 2 hours just to explain how he was dividing up an old set of tools between us. 2 hours over tools. And now I was supposed to believe he secretly cut me out of his entire will and never mentioned a word. No, something wasn't right. The next morning I found Marcus in the kitchen. He was drinking coffee like it was just another normal day. No signs of grief, no hesitation, just calm, too calm. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't even look surprised. "About what?" "About what you said yesterday," I snapped. "About Dad leaving everything to you," he sighed like I was the one being difficult. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded document. "I figured you'd react like this," he said, sliding it across the table. "That's why I have proof." My hands were shaking as I picked it up. It looked official, typed, signed, stamped, a will. I scanned through it quickly, my eyes searching for my name. But the more I read, the colder I felt. There it was, clear as day. All assets, including property, accounts, and possessions, are to be transferred solely to my son, Marcus Harper. That was it. No mention of me, not even a token amount, not even a sentence explaining why, just erased. My chest tightened. "This isn't real," I whispered. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "It is. Dad updated it months ago." "Months ago," I repeated, looking up at him. "Why wouldn't he tell me?" He shrugged. "Maybe he didn't want to hurt your feelings." That answer hit me harder than anything else because it didn't sound like my dad at all. My dad didn't avoid hard conversations, he faced them head on. If he had made a decision like this, he would have sat me down, explained it, made sure I understood. He wouldn't just disappear and leave me to find out like this. "Something's wrong," I said, shaking my head. "This doesn't feel right." Marcus's expression hardened. "You're in denial." "No," I shot back, "I'm thinking clearly. And none of this adds up." For a moment we just stared at each other, and that's when I saw it, a flicker, just for a second, but it was there, nervousness. He looked away too quickly. Took another sip of his coffee, even though his hand was slightly shaking. Marcus never got nervous, not like that. That's when my gut started screaming at me. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "What do you mean, the will?" I said. "Who gave it to you?" "The lawyer, obviously." "Which lawyer?" He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "That's not important," he said quickly. "Everything's already been handled." "Not important," I repeated. "Marcus, you just told me Dad cut me out of his entire life's work and you expect me not to ask questions." He slammed his cup down on the counter. "I don't have time for this," he snapped. "The decision's been made, you need to accept it and move on." Move on from my father's death and losing my home in less than 24 hours. It felt insane, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the will, it was about control, the way he was rushing everything, the way he avoided details. The way he shut down every question I asked. It all pointed to one thing: he didn't want me digging deeper, because if everything was legitimate, there would be no reason to hide anything. "Let me talk to the lawyer," I said firmly. "I want to hear this from them directly." Marcus's face changed instantly. That calm, controlled mask, it cracked. "No," he said quickly, too quickly. "That's not necessary, not necessary." I stepped closer. "Or not convenient." His eyes narrowed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said, my voice steadier now. "You are." Silence filled the room, heavy, tense, and in that moment I knew one thing for sure: whatever Marcus was telling me, it wasn't the whole truth. By the time I left the house, it didn't even feel real anymore. I packed what I could: clothes, a few personal things, some old photos I couldn't bear to leave behind, and shoved everything into my car. Marcus didn't help, didn't even watch. It was like I had already stopped existing to him. 24 hours, that's all it took to go from having a home to having nowhere to go. I drove aimlessly for a while, not really thinking about where I was headed. My mind was too loud, too crowded with questions that had no answers. Every street looked unfamiliar, even though this was the same city I had lived in my entire life. Eventually, I pulled over at a small park I used to visit as a kid. It wasn't anything special, just a few benches, some trees, a quiet walking path, but it felt safe, or at least safer than anywhere else at that moment. I grabbed my bag, got out of the car, and sat down on one of the old wooden benches. And that's when it hit me. Everything, the grief, the confusion, the betrayal. I had been holding it together for so long, through the funeral, through Marcus's coldness, through packing up my life in a single day, but sitting there alone. With nothing left to distract me, I broke. Tears just started falling, quiet at first, then uncontrollable. I remember covering my face with my hands, trying to muffle the sound, like somehow even my pain needed to stay hidden. People walked by, but no one stopped, and honestly, I didn't expect them to. This wasn't the kind of thing strangers get involved in, or at least that's what I thought. Danielle, the voice was soft, gentle, but clear enough to cut through everything in my head. I froze. Slowly, I lowered my hands and looked up. Standing in front of me was an elderly woman. Maybe in her late 70s, early 80s. She had silver hair pulled back neatly, and her eyes, they were sharp. Not in a harsh way, but in a way that made you feel like she could see more than she was letting on. And the way she was looking at me, it wasn't curiosity, it was recognition. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, wiping my face. "Do I know you?" She smiled faintly. "No, but I know you." That sent a chill down my spine. I sat up straighter, suddenly alert. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly lowered herself onto the bench beside me, moving carefully but with purpose. "I've been wondering when I'd run into you," she said. My heart started beating faster. "Okay, this is a little strange," I admitted. "How do you know my name?" She turned to look at me fully now. And there it was again, that look, calm, certain, like she had already decided something long before this moment. "Because I knew your father." Everything inside me stopped. "You knew my dad?" She nodded. "Very well." For a second I didn't know what to say. My dad had mentioned coworkers, old friends, people from his past, but I had never seen this woman before. "Not once." "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "I don't recognize you." "That's because your father never wanted you involved in that part of his life," she replied. "That part of his life." The words didn't sit right with me. "What part?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She studied me for a moment like she was deciding how much to say, then she sighed. "I was there the day he made his final decisions," she said, "about everything." My stomach dropped. "You mean his will?" She nodded again. And suddenly everything Marcus had told me came rushing back. "He left everything to my brother," I said quickly. "I've already seen it." The woman's expression didn't change, not even a little. Instead, she said something that made my entire world tilt. "No," she said calmly, "he didn't." I stared at her, my mind struggling to catch up. "What? Your father didn't abandon you," she continued, her voice steady. "He made sure you were taken care of." "That's not what the will says," I argued, even though my voice was shaking now. "Because that's not the only will," she replied. Silence, heavy, deafening silence. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" I asked. She turned to face me fully now, her eyes locking onto mine. "I'm saying," she said slowly, "your brother is lying to you." The world around me seemed to fade. The park, the people, the noise, everything disappeared except those words, because deep down I already knew. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. Because hearing that my dad hadn't abandoned me should have brought comfort. It should have lifted that crushing weight off my chest, but instead it did something else. It made everything darker. Because if my dad didn't cut me out, then that meant one thing: someone was lying, and I already knew who. I looked at the woman, my mind racing, trying to process what she had just said. "A second will?" I asked, my voice unsteady. "That doesn't make any sense. Why would there be two?" She didn't seem surprised by my reaction. If anything, she looked like she had been expecting it. "Because your father knew something wasn't right," she said quietly. My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She paused for a moment, glancing around the park like she was making sure no one was close enough to hear. Then she leaned in slightly. "In the last few months of his life," she began, "your father started to have doubts about your brother." That hit me like a shockwave. "Doubts about what?" She exhaled slowly. "About his intentions, about his behavior, about the way he was positioning himself." "Positioning himself?" I frowned. "I don't understand." "He was asking questions," she continued. "About the house, the accounts, the legal process, things most people don't suddenly become interested in unless they're planning something." A cold chill ran through me. Because now that she said it, I remembered, Marcus had been acting differently, subtly at first, making comments about finances, asking Dad about paperwork. Even offering to help organize things more than usual. At the time it seemed responsible, mature, even now it felt calculated. "So what did my dad do?" I asked. "He took precautions," she replied, "quiet ones." My heart started pounding again. He didn't want to create conflict, not without proof, but he also didn't want to leave anything to chance. "So he made arrangements privately." "That's the second will?" She nodded. "Yes, a revised version, one that clearly outlined how everything was to be divided fairly." Fairly, the word hit me hard. "Then why haven't I seen it?" I asked. "Why would Marcus only show me the other one?" The woman's expression turned serious. "Because the version your brother showed you," she said carefully, "was the old one." My mind went blank. "The old one?" "Yes," she confirmed. "The one your father created before he started having concerns." I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. "That doesn't make any sense." Wouldn't the newer will automatically replace the old one? It would, she said, if it's presented. Those words hung in the air like a warning. If it's presented, I repeated slowly. She nodded. A will is only valid in practice if it's actually brought forward. If someone chooses to hide it or pretend it doesn't exist, they can control everything, I finished, my voice barely audible. Exactly, I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting again. So you're saying Marcus knows about the second will? Her silence answered the question before she even spoke. Yes, she said. He knows. A wave of anger surged through me, sharp, sudden, overwhelming. He knows, I repeated, and he still threw me out. He still stood there and lied to my face. Her gaze softened slightly. I believe he was counting on one thing. What? That no one else would ever find out. I let out a shaky breath, running my hands through my hair. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was something else entirely, something deliberate, something planned. But how do you know all this? I asked, looking at her again. Why are you telling me? For the first time since we started talking, she hesitated. Then she reached into her bag, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a sealed envelope. My heart stopped. I was there the day your father finalized the new will, she said. He didn't trust many people, but he trusted me. She held the envelope out toward me. And he made sure, she added, her voice steady, that someone would be able to set things right if anything ever went wrong. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Because deep down I already knew, this wasn't just evidence. This was the truth Marcus never wanted me to see. I sat in my car for nearly 10 minutes just staring at the envelope in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have, like it wasn't just paper inside, but answers, truth, maybe even justice, or maybe something worse. My heart was racing so fast it almost hurt. Because once I opened it, once I knew for sure, there would be no going back, no pretending, no second guessing, just the truth, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it, but I opened it anyway. Inside were documents, official, signed, dated, and right there, clear as day, was my father's name, his real will, not the version Marcus had shown me. Not the cold, one-sided document that erased me from existence. This one was different. This one was him. Everything was split fairly. The house, the savings. Even personal items were carefully listed, things he knew mattered to each of us, and at the bottom there was a handwritten note. Short, simple, but unmistakably my dad, take care of each other. That's what matters most. My vision blurred instantly, because that was the man I knew, not the version Marcus tried to paint, not someone who would cut me out without a word. No, this proved everything. Marcus lied, not misunderstood, not miscommunicated, lied, and suddenly all the confusion I'd been feeling turned into something sharper, hotter, anger. I wiped my tears, folded the documents carefully, and started the car. There was only one thing left to do, confront him. The drive back to the house felt different this time. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't broken, I was focused. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked the same. Same porch, same windows, same house I grew up in, but it didn't feel the same, not anymore. I walked up to the door and didn't even hesitate. I opened it and stepped inside like I still belonged there, because I did. Marcus was in the living room, scrolling through his phone like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just torn my life apart. He looked up when he saw me, and immediately frowned. "What are you doing here?" he asked. No concern, no surprise, just irritation. I didn't answer right away. I walked a few steps closer, then held up the envelope. His expression shifted instantly. Just for a second, but it was enough. Recognition, followed by something else. Panic. "We need to talk," I said calmly. "I already told you everything," he replied quickly, standing up. "You need to." "No," I cut him off. "You told me your version, now it's my turn." Silence filled the room. I pulled out the documents and placed them on the table between us. His eyes locked onto them, and I saw it happen. That calm, controlled confidence he'd been hiding behind, it cracked. "What is this?" he asked, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. "You tell me," I said. He didn't move, didn't reach for the papers, because he already knew. "That's not real," he said after a moment. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Not real," I repeated. "It's signed, witnessed, dated after the one you showed me." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand how this works," he snapped. "No," I said, my voice rising now. "You don't understand. I trusted you." That hit harder than anything else, because for a second, just a second, he looked away, guilty. "This isn't just about money, is it?" I continued. "You planned this, you waited until he was gone so you could control everything." "That's not true," he fired back. "Then why hide this?" I demanded, pointing at the will. "Why lie?" He didn't answer, and that was my answer. The silence, the tension, the way he couldn't even look at me anymore. Everything I needed to know was right there. "You were going to let me walk away with nothing," I said quietly. After everything, after losing Dad, you were ready to erase me." His voice dropped when he finally spoke again. "I deserved more," he muttered. I froze. "What? I was the one who stayed," he said louder now. "I was the one helping him, dealing with everything." "You don't know what it was like, so that gives you the right to lie?" I shot back. He didn't respond because there was no justification for it. None. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "This ends now," I said firmly. "We're taking this to a lawyer, the real one, and we're doing this the right way." He didn't argue, didn't fight. Because for the first time since all of this started, he knew he'd lost. And as I stood there, holding the truth in my hands, I realized something. This wasn't just the end of a lie. It was the beginning of seeing my brother for who he really was. If this story hit you in any way, don't just scroll away. Backhand index pointing right like this video to support stories that bring hidden truths to light. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to the channel for more real, emotional, and jaw-dropping stories just like this one. Backhand index pointing right, and most importantly, comment below, what would you have done in my situation? Would you forgive your brother or never speak to him again? Your voice matters because someone out there might be going through the same thing right now.